Hopefully we've got everybody in the room. This guy's gone. Thank you. Slightly reduced number in the second half because 2 or 3 people have to leave for various reasons. So we'll start with some more open mic poets, and then we'll have our second section, our 2 featured poets today. So looking forward to that. So I'd like to start with a poet who is reading the work of his late wife, Frances White. Frances was a regular performer at Dodo Modern Poets. In fact, when we moved here to the King and Queen at the beginning of 2017, she was one of our featured poets on our first bill here. And she's read for us many times over the years, plus she's a good friend as well. So we remember her very great deal of pleasure and happiness that she was able to share her poetry with us so often, and just be part of this lovely project we've been hammering away at for the last 30 years. I can't believe it, but in July we will have been doing Dodo Modern Poets for 30 years, so there you are. I know none of us were old enough to start when we were children, obviously. But first of all, anyway, sorry, I digress. So please, Steve White.
Thank you. Thanks, Patrick. Yes, Frances was a great Bob Dylan fan, very appropriate for this room, and he inspired her, I'm sure, in some of her poetry. She wrote this one after she'd walked into a lamppost and went wallop on her head. It's called Talking Black-Eye Blues. I walked into a street lamp the other day, talking and looking the opposite way, landed in a heap upon the ground. The world was spinning round and round. Someone took me to see a nurse. She said, that bruise will get much worse. Shone a light into my eye, shook her head and gave a sigh. Now did you have too much to drink, or was it a man? She grinned and winked. It's quite a crack, but you ain't dead yet, so go on home and don't you fret. My right side aches, my left side sore, I draw the curtains and lock the door, feel like I've been through World War III, so I listen to a Bob Dylan CD. He makes me laugh, he makes me cry, makes me think and lifts me high. As blood goes pounding round my head, I dream of him on his big brass bed, a wily master of disguise, with gravelly voice and piercing eyes. And even though I'm black and blue, Bob, I want to be tangled up with you. Yes, as Patrick said, Frances goes back a long way with Patrick, and one of Patrick's poems was, I seem to recall, all about some Che Guevara underpants. And Frances, we went to Cuba, and I know Patrick has had very positive visits and memories of Cuba. We went to see this almost 7 years ago now, Ballet Revolution, direct from Cuba, and if you look at that flyer there, it's quite a striking young chap on there. So Frances wrote this. It's called Revolution T-shirt. Ballet Revolution has come to London town with explosive Cuban dancing, so tonight that's where we're bound. I'm smitten by the muscle man featured on the flyer, leaping in midair to whet the heart's desire. In the foyer, young girls tempt us to buy the merchandise. A Revolution T-shirt has really caught my eye. 20 quid, that's far too much. My husband starts to rant. Even if we do have friends with Che Guevara pants. He buys me a mojito with a potent kick of rum, then guides me to the stalls and the rhythm of the drums. As those hot-blooded dancers cast their noisy Cuban spell, I forget about the T-shirt, the underpants as well.
Sadly, I'm not wearing the Che Guevara underpants today, otherwise I'd obviously show them to you. So thank you, Steve White. And now Jane Sherwin.
Well, I was told there were 2 poems, but these are teeny weeny ones. This is, rather than hymns, ancient and modern, these are hers, ancient and modern. And the first one is well-known, Shanty. Bobby Shafto's gone to sea, silver buckles at his knee. When he comes back, he'll marry me, bonny Bobby Shafto. Bonny Shafto's bright and fair, combing down his yellow hair. He's my aim for evermore, Bobby Shafto. Bobby Shafto's getting a bairn, for to dandle in his arm. Pray God keep my love from harem, bonny Bobby Shafto. Bobby Shafto is a shit. There is no other name for it. He has done a moonlit fit. Bugger Bobby Shafto. Number 2, identical twins. Hickory dickory dock, my brother has borrowed my frock, and just to confuse, he's put on my shoes. My boyfriend is in for a shock. Descendants. 1 a penny, 2 a penny, hot cross buns. You're always close to trouble if you've 3 grandsons. But treasure that granddaughter and her pretty little daughter, and hope to do much better with your great-grandsons. The Jabberwock. Beware the Jabberwock, my daughter, the man you love but didn't alter. I know you've always felt that butter wouldn't melt, but you may come a cropper ere the days grow shorter. And this Bewaring of the Green was written in 2016. Bar, BHS, have you any work? We would have had if Philip Green wasn't such a jerk. There he is a-sailing on the port in Nice, while back here his failing has turned our wool to fleece. Bar, BHS, have you stocks and shares? Once upon a time we did, but now they're shocks and stairs. Mother Goose's Plaint. Red lorry, yellow lorry, blue lorry, green. Took a trip to London town to visit the Queen. They drove to the palace, but the Queen wasn't there. Nor Westminster, nor Whitehall, nor Trafalgar Square. The Queen was in the mansion house eating bread and honey, whilst the wankers in Threadneedle were divvying up the money. Red lorry, yellow lorry, lobbied their MPs. Blue lorry, green lorry, entered legal pleas. But all the tea in China and all the rain in Spain can't stop the economy from whooshing down the drain. Upon Paul's steeple stands a tree, as full of apples as may be. The likely lads of London town, they run with hooks to pull them down. Then they invest from hedge to hedge until they bankrupt London Bridge.
Thank you, Jane. So, and now, John Hurley.
I call this Why Bother. It's a visit to an old friend who's now awash with whiskey and regrets. With misrepresentation and misinformation, and people who state he lacks gumption, he's retired from the fray and called it a day. His neighbours now prone to presumption. All dreams and ambition lay dormant. No more use for the sword or the pen. No fire in his belly, he now watches telly. Says he will not write music again. Dinner parties no longer attended. It's far too much trouble to dress. Deep in the blues. Carpet slippers, not shoes. Writing desk now an untidy mess. There are days when hygiene is neglected. Shuns people because of their stares. And they stay in their bubble because he could be in trouble. Is it that nobody cares? In his heyday he played the piano. Those gnarled fingers once coaxed the keys. He once knew romances and warm loving glances. A matinee idol who knew how to please. Over his desk there's a caption. For reasons he never made clear. Whiskey not as sweet as a young woman's lips. but in most cases, much more sincere. Thank you. I went to a traveller's funeral some time ago, and there were two outsiders at this funeral, the priest and I. I call it tribal divides. His wide-brimmed hat and an ornate coffin, a white flower garland spills out king. A grey-haired priest sprinkles holy water. The organ plays, and the choir starts to sing. Their leader raised on strong men's shoulders, as with measured steps they walk the aisle. Smells of incense, respectful silence, as a travelling man's borne out with style. At the open door, there's two dark horses, a shiny carriage for a well-loved man, right and fitting this conveyance, as he spent his life in a caravan. Past the shimmering lake with its tiny wavelets, the Daimlers follow where the hearse now leads. Some willows bow their head in mourning, and a keening wind whispers in the reeds. Built up airy now, the slow clip-clop of horses. Their black plumes flutter in the breeze. The passing motorists no longer speeding to let the procession pass with ease. The cortege proceeds with the streets deserted. No warmth or welcome in our town. Two Garda cars at strategic corners, and the hotels and pubs all in lockdown. So we're not very liberal yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. And two Irishmen in a row. So we're going to finish with Joseph Healy from the open mic coterie this afternoon. Joseph.
Yeah, thank you. So we had a poem earlier about Easter, and this is in a way also about Easter, but it's about the Easter Rising in 1916, and it was written in 2016 when I went to Dublin for the centenary. And I just need to explain one or two references in it to a non-Irish audience. I'm sure John will follow the references, but there's a reference to Gay Byrne. Gay Byrne, who was a TV show talk host on Irish television, and Cumann na Mon, where the women's army of women who fought in the 1916 uprising. And I've called it Photoshop 2016, and it's because when I went on the walk in Dublin, they showed us a very famous photograph of Patrick Pearse, the leader of the Rising, surrendering to the British general. And when you look at the picture, you notice there's an extra pair of boots in the photo. And it's actually, the story is that the original surrender, the white flag, was brought by a nurse called Elizabeth Farrell. Because the British in 2016 couldn't accept, or in 1916, couldn't accept the concept of surrendering to a woman, they sent Elizabeth Farrell back to get Patrick Pearse, but she appears in the photo, but for the British, they tried to doctor the photo, but they didn't have the techniques in 2016, or 1916. So the poem is about the way in which Irish history has been, certain people have been erased from Irish history, and particularly LGBT people, like myself. On a 1916 tour of Dublin, hearing how Elizabeth Farrell, surrendering to the British, has her image removed from the photo with Pearse. But clumsy editing means her boots are still visible in the photo. No Photoshop in 1916, but editing then and now was deep in vogue. Caseman's pink gayness photoshopped from the official narrative for 90 years. The Black Diaries an insult and rebuke to the new Catholic and Apostolic state. Casement was gay, I shouted in a West Belfast Republican pub in the 80s. My gay English friend trying to bundle me out the door before I too was photoshopped. Markovitch and the women who were more than friends in Cumann na Mon, photoshopped from the collective memories of generations, weaned on Gay Byrne and the Irish mammy and a nun offering you a sweet at school. Connolly and his message photoshopped to an image of a helpless cripple in a chair, facing a firing squad, another stoic, martyred verse in the heroic hymn of nationhood. 1966, and the marching troops along O'Connell Street, with snotty children gaping there, dressed in short trousers, with Grand Uncle Dev giving out presents. An 18-year-old in Toner's pub, hearing Deb was dead, and the clink of glasses, as some praised the great man, and others damned him to hell. His portraits everywhere, his presence tangible, as father figure of a dull and Philistine state. Photoshopped, his pictures now downgraded in a new version of history where Collins is the hero. And gay friends driven to drink, despair and suicide, ex-priests and others damaged beyond repair. A referendum passed and a new dawn, a Photoshop where only footprints show where they once were.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I was there in 2016.